The reason I chose the Good and the Beautiful Language Arts for high school was because we used it when my son was in 8th grade and I was hooked. I loved it. And also my sister-in-law had used it for her 9th grader that year. So I knew somebody who had used it and had experience and said that it was a good program. But then the first unit happened and I started to question, did I make the right choice? I wasn't expecting this. So I made some adjustments for our second unit based on the new knowledge that I had. Things that I didn't know when I had ordered this. And after these adjustments and going through the second unit though, I was still wondering, is this the right curriculum for my son? I can tell this is a good, solid curriculum. I tailor my children's education to their specific strengths and weaknesses. And I started to think about IEW, the Institute for Excellence in Writing again, and the Lost Tools of Writing, which we had had previous experience with. And I started to wonder, should I go back? If you saw my recent videos that was comparing IEW to the Lost Tools of Writing, you know that I love these curriculums. They have a very systematic approach to teaching the process of writing all kinds of different papers. So should I switch back? Because some of the process, some of the grammar elements, that's what we're struggling with. So the wheels are turning in my head. And that's why I reached out to Colleen from Our Blessed Life for this collaboration video. Colleen's channel features homeschooling and homemaking content. Her homemaking content includes day in the life vlogs, cleaning, organizing, and cooking videos. Her homeschooling content includes day in the life vlogs, practical homeschool tips, and also curriculum reviews. She teaches her 2 daughters, a 9-year-old named Sophie, who has a rare genetic condition, SET D5, which causes learning challenges, and she has Katie, a 17-year-old senior who just started dual enrollment this year. She's also a former Classical Conversations mom with experience with IEW and Lost Tools of Writing. For high school, Colleen and her daughter Katie chose the Good and the Beautiful. So I just knew Colleen was the perfect person to help us with this conundrum, what to do for high school. In Colleen's video, she's going to share how IEW, Lost Tools of Writing, and the Good and the Beautiful helped prepare her daughter for dual enrollment in English 101, a composition and rhetoric course that her daughter is taking at a local university for dual enrollment. So I'm going to link Colleen's video below. Make sure you check it out after you finish with me. So I'm going to share with you 12 things that I didn't know when I ordered the Good and the Beautiful Language Arts for high school, or should I say things that I didn't realize until we had a few units under our belt. Is anybody else guilty of that? You're doing all your research, you're reading through the directions, but it just doesn't quite click until you actually start to do it. If you choose a new curriculum, there's always new things to get used to, and I know for me, I've got high school, which adds a whole new set of things to have to keep track of. So the very first thing that you should be aware of for the Good and the Beautiful High School Language Arts is the order confirmation email. Why do you need the email? There is a link in that order confirmation email that has your answers to the booklet. It comes with your order. So from the website, I think you can purchase the answers for 99 cents, but it is in your confirmation email. So download that before your email gets lost or deleted. Number 2, you need a binder, Mom. Someplace for you to keep track of all of these answers for the grading rubric. There isn't really a teacher's manual that is sent to you or a nice, neat answer key. So I created a binder to hold all of these things and where I keep track of my son's grades. Number 3, get a magnifying glass. These answers that they give you, they come so small. And if you have eyesight like mine, you're gonna need a magnifying glass. There's no way that I can figure out how to print it out larger, and that's just how they send it. Number 4 is inside the booklets as your student is working through each unit. There are all kinds of additional videos that will be referenced in there, so your child is gonna need access to a computer or an iPad or some place where he can watch these videos. If you are having them work independently, keep this in mind. If they're going to be next to you, I guess it doesn't matter. Keep this in mind. They are going to be working through the booklet, but also are going to need to have online access. Number 5, I really struggled with this one. So the grading rubric, when you start to grade your first booklet, I realized this isn't really getting a grade for correct work. The rubric gives them a grade simply for completing it. I really struggled with this. What if they don't get correct answers? They get extra credit for neat handwriting. But what if there's a ton of mistakes? Like this is
where the conundrum started to happen with me.
Because our first unit, I let my son do it. I let him ask questions, as he worked through it. But when I finally graded it, there were a lot of mistakes. A lot of times they are giving those videos kind of re-explaining, and they have this grammar and writing guide to help remind them how to do things. So they're not getting a grade on the workbook. They are getting a grade on the unit checks, and I will talk more about that. When deciding how long to take to complete one of these booklets, they do give suggestions for a 4-day school week and a 5-day school week. You might want to make adjustments here and there, especially if you need to check your child's work in between, or if you want to give them an extra day to study. Like maybe you want to check the workbook for errors, then give them a day to study before they do the unit check. So you might need to consider all of those things. Also in Unit 2, they will have your student do a presentation. Like I'm talking PowerPoint, creating slides. You might want to give your student extra time to work on that because it's a formal presentation. And they also have you grade whether or not they do it to an audience. So you might need to schedule some of those things in. So though they might give you a general time frame for these booklets, Mom, you may want to add some extra days for some of these things. So just make sure you and your student are in constant communication. So number 7, I want to talk more about this PowerPoint presentation. So my son loves PowerPoint. He loves utilizing that program, and he will put his heart and soul into the presentation. We have to remind him on some of these projects that he's super excited about what we call the 80-20 rule. 80% is good enough, because if you're let's say in the real world, and you're spending 5 days to do a task that maybe your boss thought would only take 1 day, but you made it like perfect, your boss is not going to be happy. 80% is usually good enough. So there's a balance between doing a job well done and taking too long because you are overthinking and being a perfectionist. So we do have to talk about that on some of the PowerPoint presentations. But that was a really cool assignment, and I was blown away by what my son did for that. Side note on that presentation, I do regularly invite my parents over when my children have a presentation. So we've encountered this also in the elementary years, the Good and the Beautiful Science unit. Sometimes they had presentations to give. Keep that in mind. I try to do it quarterly. So it worked out well that my son had a presentation that my parents were already planning on coming over, and he had an audience to give the presentation to, not just his immediate family. That was in Unit 2. You need an audience. By the way, if you have used the Good and the Beautiful High School Language Arts before, leave me a comment below. What surprised you? What lessons did you learn from it that we can all learn from? I am always looking for tips. We are not all the way through the school year yet. What else do we need to know? So leave me a comment below. Or what questions do you have after this video? So number 8, I alluded to this already, but that is, I did not realize how engaged Mom needed to be on a day-to-day basis. I'm trying to teach my high schooler to work independently, because when he goes to college, Mom's not going to be there. So we're trying to let him exercise that with some regular check-ins. But on these particular units, you may need to decide if you need to check in daily. By Unit 3, I actually noticed, because when I started to grade his book, when I started to really look into it, I noticed that it said, watch the video or discuss the following questions with a group. Now, this is about poetry. If your student needs help interpreting poetry or finding the deeper meaning in poetry. Like, my son did not tell me that this was in there, and I didn't pay attention to know that it was, and he opted to watch the video, but watching the video does not mean that he fully understood it. So I told him, before I grade this, he and I are going to go through these discussion questions with these Emily Dickinson poems. If he doesn't answer them to my liking, then we can dig deeper, because I'm mom and I'm the teacher and I have the freedom to do that. He's not a poet. This is not his strong suit. So I think that he needs engagement with me on this one. There might be little things like that throughout the booklet that you might have to tell your student, listen, when it says or discuss, come find me. You may need to decide how you're going to do papers, because every single one of these booklets is going to have a journal insights entry, which is essentially a paper. Do you want your child to just turn in the paper? Or do you want to see the first draft and go through it and edit it with them? I will say my experience from both IEW and Lost Tools is, when it comes to writing, if you have a struggling writer, you can't help them enough. It's good to help them think through these things, because when you're helping them refine their writing and the process of writing, they actually really are learning. They're learning from the style that you're teaching them. So I had to start implementing with my son, whenever you have a paper, whether it's language arts or history or whatever, I want to see the first draft. We're going to go through it together, and I'm going to totally pick it apart, by the way. This mom shows no mercy. I want my son to be a communicator right now. Besides our emphasis on the Bible in our home, learning to communicate effectively, both verbally and in the written word, is probably my next highest priority for this child. So with that, one thing that we did come to love with IEW and the Lost Tools of Writing was their checklists. So I did make copies of some of these more advanced checklists for my son, and also from the Lost Tools of Writing, some of the templates. So if he has a persuasive paper, and honestly, one of the papers that he just wrote, it was a little bit persuasive, but he didn't have proofs that he needed to go through like the Lost Tools of Writing teaches. But I told him, but anytime you're trying to influence somebody to see your point of view, you should add an exordium, you should add an amplification. So we have totally utilized things that we have learned from the Institute for Excellence in Writing and the Lost Tools of Writing, and I put it in my son's binder for him to use whenever he is writing a paper. So number 10 was the spelling dictation. This is my son's Unit 1. I really just tried to let him do this the way that he wanted to, but in the front of the booklet, they have spelling dictation. There is a video where you can go to, so mom can decide to dictate these sentences to your child, or they can go to this video and the Good and the Beautiful will dictate these sentences to their child. But here's what we didn't grasp the first unit. My son literally, he liked to skip around in the unit. So he tried to do 3 or 4 pages a day, and he just chose whatever pages he felt like doing that day. He ended up saving the spelling dictation to the last minute. I didn't get it graded, so he ended up getting marked off for not completing it. So for our next unit, I said, you're doing spelling dictation on day 1, day 5, and day 10. Number 11, and this one is a huge bonus that I did not realize when I ordered the Good and the Beautiful. I don't know why I was confused about the credits. I knew it was a language arts credit, but you guys, this language arts program, also every unit you get a half credit for art and a half credit for geography. There is a lot of art and geography, and at first I was like, is it a half credit for art over if you do all 3 years of the Good and Beautiful? Because they only have 1 art project per booklet. So 10 booklets a year, 10 art projects. Is that really a half a credit? But guys, there is so much more in there than just the art project. There is a lot of art appreciation. In fact, in Unit 2, the slide deck that he created was all about artists in an art school and showing art. I mean, it's incorporated into the language arts, and also the maps. I mean, his presentation included the geography.
This is the oxbow. It's one of Homeschool's famous paintings.
Certain geographical terms and explaining the geography of the area where these art schools were. So yeah, you're getting 2 high school credits for using the Good and the Beautiful language arts 1 for language, half for art, and half for geography. So if you do all 3 of their years, you will have 3 language arts credits, 1.5 credits for art, and 1.5 credits for geography. Bonus. Before I get to the last point, one thing I want to note is with every single curriculum, Mom, just because you finish the curriculum does not mean that that curriculum was a success. What if you checked all the boxes and you get all these booklets done, but your child didn't do it well, or they still don't understand how to diagram sentences or how to structure a paper? You know, they're still struggling, but they got them all done. Some kids are gifted at language arts. Some kids are gifted in math. And often we're comparing our kids to other kids and feeling like, well, they're behind if they didn't complete all of this in this time frame or in this way. I actually did a video where I kind of allude to some of this. It's my video where are you being weighed down by curriculum and rethinking how we think about homeschool curriculum, because if we are judging every student by their ability to climb a tree, well, what if they're a fish? What if they're not a monkey? What if they're a fish? I think about this like with this program. I really want my son to write well, and I want him to understand all of these grammar concepts well. So what if we get to the end of the school year and he's only completed 9 booklets and not the 10? You know what? He still did the work. We may have had to repeat some. It's still progress. That foundation is all I care about. So I'm rethinking, whether or not we finish the 10 booklets or not. We may just do the 10th booklet next year. So with that, my 12th thing that you should know before ordering The Good and the Beautiful Language Arts High School is, drumroll, I wish I could roll my tongue, tailoring the grading. So I mentioned the booklets. They get credit for completion, not for grading. Do you want to grade them? How do you grade the papers? They give you some guidance, but you need to think about what skills your child struggles with, what your expectations for your child is. So this is the grading sheet that they give you access to from their website, and it shows that you're going to be tracking the 250 points from each unit booklet and 100 points from the unit checks. So I'm going to show you some of the variety of projects that are inside each booklet, and then I'll let you look at the unit check. But then we're going to talk about something that I'm sure you haven't thought of. Okay, the first booklet is all about if it was completed and the journal insights journal entry, and this is in every single unit. But by unit 2, they added the Hudson River School slideshow presentation. So now we've got some more variety in here. They also have other projects. So their art project, the geography usually done on tracing paper, handing that all in with this. So that counts on whether or not it's complete. Now by unit 3, we've got this Emily Dickinson style definition. We've still got if the unit was completed and the insights journal, handwriting, extra credit. So that's what's counting here. Unit 4, what's in unit 4? Now we've got whether or not the booklet was completed. There's a flower project, 2 introductory paragraphs, insights journal entry, extra credit, 2 maps. So there's a lot of variety here, which I wasn't sure on the first unit. As I'm going along in these units, I'm noticing there's just a little bit extra here. So just keep that in mind. I didn't look through. I don't know if the rest of you all looked through every single booklet when it came. I did not. So I guess what I'm telling you is unit 1 is not necessarily an indication. That's how it always is. But it still is a conundrum. Like, we need to check in on all of this and make sure we're understanding this. So the unit check does kind of test all of their knowledge from that unit, but I would say it's only 4 pages. It kind of briefly, there's another like writing assignment that they do at the end. So testing their writing style. It's a really high level. You get the idea on every single unit. There is a little bit of variety in there. There's special papers, there's special projects. And then our final unit, Unit 10, we have a process essay. With these extra projects, I will say there are grading sheets. So there's a grading sheet inside the booklet, so this is page 17, that tells you how to grade the essay, which is helpful. So all of the extra projects have that, and then the journal insights entry. Unit 10 did not have an insights journal, so I had to go back to Unit 9. But this is why we may need to tailor the grading. Is it edited carefully for proper grammar, punctuation, and usage is only worth 5 points. Is it ordered logically is only 5 points. Now, varying sentence structure, I guess that's kind of grammar. You might want to give more weight on this, considered a paper. You might want to give more weight to the grammar. It just depends what you're working on for your student. So now you've seen how they give an overall grade. We've talked a little bit about tailoring that, tailoring how you might grade and weight papers. But what about the credits? Remember, there's 1 for language arts, a half for art, and a half for geography. But did you notice they don't have separate grades for art and geography? So I've seen questions online from some of the mothers wanting to separate out geography and art for a separate grade. As you've seen, you don't really grade the art, it's part of the completion of the unit. There are some separate art projects, but like the presentation my son did in Unit 2, that incorporated the language arts, the geography, and the art. You might want to separate the grades if, for example, you have a child who doesn't do as well in language arts as they are an artist, or maybe they never missed any geography and you want to separate those subjects out to give them an A if maybe they only got, say, a B in language arts. This probably makes the most sense to do if your child is college bound and you're trying to increase that GPA. So I don't think for your transcript that you have to separate those out as separate grades, but if that's the way you want to do it, then you need to keep in mind the good and the beautiful does not separate these grades. You would need to tailor it. There are those map projects that they turn in. There's geography portion on every single unit check. So you could separate it out, but just keep that in mind. They do not do that for you. The Good and the Beautiful is going to give you guidelines, but mom, you really need to think about your child's specific needs. So with all of that, it got me wondering, as I'm still seeing some of the strengths, but also some of the weaknesses that my son still has with language arts, got me wondering about IEW and lost tools of writing. So check out this video of my thoughts on both of those programs and how they work. Should I stick with the Good and the Beautiful for high school next year, or should I switch to the high school IEW or Lost Tools? That is the question. Be sure to check out Colleen's video. I can't wait to hear her thoughts on this subject.